Welcome to the Bodhi Academy. My name is Amisha Kulaso, and in today's video we will continue with our chapter The Fundamental Unit of Life, Class 9, Chapter 5. So in today's video we will talk about the nucleus. So now to begin with talking about the nucleus, we remember that when we did the onion peel experiment, in that when we mounted the onion peel, we had put a iodine solution to that. So what was happening in that was not all of the regions or all of the cells were gaining the color, or they were not getting stained. Some were getting stained darker, whereas some of them were getting stained lighter. So now why was this happening? So according to their chemical composition, different regions of cell get colored differently. Some regions appear darker than the others. Apart from iodine solution, we could also use safranin solution or methylene blue solution to stain these cells. So what was happening was the intensity of the color, it was varying depending on the chemical composition, okay, depending on what kind of chemical is present in which part of it. So different regions had different chemical composition. So depending on that, some regions were appearing darker or were getting stained more, and some were appearing lighter or they were getting stained less. So we have observed cells from an onion. Now let us observe cells from our own body. The nucleus has a double layered covering called a nuclear membrane. So now first thing is that nucleus has a outer membrane for itself, that is a double layered covering, and that is known as the nuclear membrane. Now what does this nuclear membrane does? This nuclear membrane that is there, it has tiny pores, okay, and these pores, they allow the transfer of material from outside the nucleus to inside of it, that is to the cytoplasm, which we have already talked in the above section. So now what is happening is that this nuclear membrane that is there, it has this tiny pores or tiny holes, we can say, okay. So now whatever transfer is happening of material from inside to outside, from inside the nucleus to outside the nucleus, what we have the cytoplasm. So that transfer is happening through these tiny pores which are there on the nuclear membrane. Now the nucleus contains chromosomes which are visible as rod shaped structures only when the cell is about to divide. So now nucleus, first it contains of chromosomes. Now these chromosomes are rod like structures, and these rod like structures, they only appear when the cell is about to get divided. These chromosomes now, they contain some kind of information, and mostly they have the information of inheritance of characters, like this chromosomes will have, if you will these chromosomes decide if you will have what, curly hair or straighter hair, if you will have like a shorter height or you will be tall. These kinds of inheritance information of characters these chromosomes hold. Chromosomes contain information for inheritance of characters from parents to the next generation, which goes in the form of DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. So this information that is there, it goes on through this chromosome. So chromosomes have this inheritance character information, then which is transferred to the upcoming offspring through the DNA. Now chromosomes are composed of DNA and protein. So now chromosomes further they are having DNA as well as protein. So these DNA molecules, they contain the information necessary for constructing and organizing cells. Functional segments of DNA are called as genes. So functional segments are the ones which define the different characters, okay. So we say that this person has this kind of gene, okay, right. They have long hair, so they have a gene of longer hair, right. So that is what this DNA has, this functional segments of DNA, which are known as genes. Now in a cell which is not dividing, this DNA is present as part of chromatin material. Now in the cell, what we spoke, chromosomes are present, or chromosomes only appear when the cell is about to get divided. Now but in a cell which is not going to get divided, this DNA, it is present as a part of the chromatin material. Now what is this chromatin material? So chromatin materials, they are like large masses of entangled thread. Now say you have like, you can imagine a roll of thread that is entangled in various ways. Okay, so that is what this chromatin material is. Now what happens is that the minute the cell is about to divide, these thread like structures, they form the chromosomes, that they convert to the rod like structures. Now if the cell is not dividing, they will stick together and they will be into that entangled mass of thread like structures. So whenever the cell is about to divide, the chromatin material gets organized into the chromosomes. The nucleus plays a central role in cellular reproduction, the process by which a single cell divides and forms two cells. So now nucleus has a major role in cellular reproduction. Now what is cellular reproduction? It is the process by which one single cell, it divides and forms two new cells. It also plays a crucial part along with the environment in determining the wall the cell will develop and what form it will exhibit at maturity by directing the chemical activities of the cell. So now also what it does is that it decides the environment in which the cell will develop and what will happen or further what will happen or what the cell will exhibit at its maturity level. When it is fully mature, what is the property that it will exhibit. In some organisms like bacteria, the nuclear region of the cell may be poorly defined due to the absence of a nuclear membrane. So now in some organisms like for example bacteria, what is happening? The nuclear region of the cell, it is not highly defined. So due to the absence of the nuclear membrane, so there is no presence of nuclear membrane. So there is no transfer happening from inside to outside to the cytoplasm. Such an undefined nuclear region containing only nucleic acids is called as a nucleoid. The regions or the undefined nuclear regions which do not have this nuclear membranes and they only have this nucleic acid, they are called as the nucleoids. Such organisms whose cells lack a nuclear membrane, they are called as prokaryotes or prokaryotes. It is further broken down into primitive or primary karyon, that is the nucleus. They are the primary nucleus, as in these organisms, they don't have the nuclear membrane, so they are called as prokaryotes. Now organisms with cells having the nuclear membranes, they are called as the eukaryotes. So now prokaryotic cells also lack most of the other cytoplasmic organelles. So this is the prokaryotic cell which is not having the nuclear membrane present in the eukaryotic cell. Many of the functions of such organelles are also performed by poorly organized parts of the cytoplasm. The chlorophyll in photosynthetic prokaryotic bacteria is associated with membranous vessels, bag-like structure, but not with the plastids as in the eukaryotic cells. So now what they are saying is that prokaryotic cells, along with one thing, they don't have the nuclear membrane. Other than that, they lack most of the other cytoplasmic organelles that are present in eukaryotic cells. So what is happening? Many of the functions of such organelles are poorly performed or they are poorly organized parts of the cytoplasm. So say the chlorophyll that is present in the photosynthetic prokaryotic bacteria, it is associated with the membranous vessels but not with the plastids as in the eukaryotic cells. So now let's look at the next part. We said outside the nucleus, we have the nuclear membrane, and then we have the cytoplasm. So now let's try to understand what is this cytoplasm. So when we look at the temporary mounds of the onion peel as well as the human cheek cells, we can see a large region of each cell enclosed by the cell membrane. So each cell, we know it has some kind of membrane to it. So this region takes up very little stain. So the membrane which is there, the membrane part of it, it takes up very little stain and it is called as the cytoplasm. So that cytoplasm, it is the fluid contained inside the plasma membrane. So cytoplasm is basically a fluid that is present inside each of the plasma membranes. It also contains many specialized cell organelles. Each of these organelles, they perform a specific function for the cell. So now this fluid which is there, the fluid contains many specialized cell organelles, and each of these organelles, what they do, they perform various functions for the cell. The cell organelles are enclosed by the membrane. In prokaryotes, besides the absence of a defined nuclear region, the membrane-bound cell organelles are also absent. So in prokaryotes, we don't have the firstly nuclear membrane. Secondly, we don't even have the membrane-bound cell organelles, which are also absent in that case. On the other hand, the eukaryotic cells, they have the nuclear membrane as well as the membrane enclosed organelles. So there is the organelles are present as well as it has a outer membrane. The significance of membranes can be illustrated with the example of viruses. Viruses lack any membranes and hence do not show characteristics of life until they enter a living body and use its cell machinery to multiply. So what they are saying is that one simple example of to understand the membranes is to understand the viruses. So viruses which are there, they lack these membranes, and what they do, therefore they don't have a characteristic to life. They don't remain for a very long time, or they don't show out very often until and unless they enter into a living body. So the minute they are outside of something non-living body, in that case they don't show any characteristics of themselves. The minute they enter a living body, they show its characteristic as well as they begin to multiply. So that was about the cytoplasm. Now let's try to understand what are these cell organelles. Now every cell has a membrane around it to keep its own content separated from the external environment. Okay, so now what they are saying, each membrane that is present in the body, okay, each cell which is present in the body, it has its own membrane. Like the nucleus, it has its nuclear membrane. Organelles which are there, they also have its own membrane. So each cell has a membrane so that its contents, whatever it has, is separated out from the common body. So large and complex cells, they include cells from multicellular organisms, and they need a lot of chemical activities to support their complicated structure and function. To keep these activities of different kinds separate from each other, these cells use membrane-bound little structures or these organelles. So now to keep their functions or keep a like kind of distinction that is happening between their different cells and the different function or different activities each of them perform, these cells, they use this membrane bound little structures within themselves. This one of the feature of the eukaryotic cells that distinguish them from the prokaryotic cells. Some of these organelles are visible only with electron microscope. So that is, they are very tiny, and for them you need an electron microscope. We have talked about the nucleus in the previous section. Now some important examples of cell organelles which we will discuss are the endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, mitochondria and plastids. These are some of the important and these are some of the very important cell organelles, and they have some of the very crucial functions in cell. So about this cell organelles we will talk about in the next video. So that was it for today's video. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the Bodhi Academy.